problem with the United States political landscape is that people are becoming more divided and angry about politics. This has led to scary situations where people make threats or even act violently when someone criticizes a politician they support. Why people get so defensive about politics. The first is going to be that politics have become a part of people's identity. The second is that people are living in echo chambers. The third one is that some folks believe that if the other political party wins, it'll destroy their way of life. The fourth one is that there's a strong us versus them feeling in politics now. For the first one, about politics have become a part of people's identity, this deep connection between personal identity and political beliefs means that political disagreements are no longer just about policies, but about who people are at their core. As a result, people react much more strongly to criticism of their political views, often feeling personally attacked and responding with intense emotions. For the people living in echo chambers one, these echo chambers, reinforced by social media algorithms and selective media consumption, create a distorted view of reality. People become less exposed to diverse viewpoints and are more entrenched in their own beliefs, making it harder to understand or empathize with those who think differently. For the third one, people believing that if the other political party wins, it'll destroy their way of life. This fear of existential threat leads people to view political opponents as not just disagreeable, but dangerous enemies. It can justify extreme actions in their mind as they believe they're fighting for their very survival or the survival of their values and way of life. The fourth is that there's a strong us versus them feeling. This tribalism in politics means that people often defend their political allies unconditionally, overlooking flaws or mistakes that they would criticize in their opponents. It creates a double standard in how people judge actions and policies based solely on which team is responsible. Now we have a how bad has it gotten, and we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 things I'm going to be using as examples. The first one, in the first half of 2024, about 1 in 5 local elected officials said they received threats, which is plenty of people being threatened for just doing their job. This high amount of threats against local officials shows how the intense political anger has seeped into even the most local levels of government, making it dangerous for people to participate in civic life. For the second one, shockingly, about 1 in 3 American adults thought political violence was sometimes okay to protect American democracy or save the country. This acceptance of political violence represents a significant shift in what Americans consider acceptable political behavior. It suggests that a large portion of the population might be willing to support or engage in violent actions if they believe it's necessary for their political cause. 1/3 of the US is around 110 million people, by the way. In 2022 and 2023, around 9% of Americans believed in wild conspiracy theories, like the idea that the government is run by evil people doing terrible things. When people believe in these extreme conspiracy theories, they may feel that normal democratic processes are inadequate to address the perceived threats, leading them to consider more drastic actions, such as actions like storming the Capitol. From 2020 to 2021, the number of pro-Trump demonstrations where people brought guns increased. The presence of weapons at political events significantly raises the stakes and the potential for violence. It creates an atmosphere of intimidation and can easily lead to escalation if tensions rise. So I have 4 things about why this is happening. The first one is that political leaders are using more aggressive language to get their supporters fired up. When leaders use inflammatory rhetoric, it normalizes extreme views and emotions. Supporters begin to see political opponents not just as people with different ideas, but as enemies to be defeated at all costs. Number 2 is that some politicians try to appeal to specific groups based on things like race or religion. By emphasizing these divisions, politicians can create a sense of us versus them that goes beyond policy disagreements and taps into deeply rooted cultural and identity issues. The third is that news sources often cater to specific political views. When people only consume news that confirms their existing beliefs, reinforces their worldview, and makes them less likely to consider alternative perspectives or question their own assumptions. Number 4 is that social media and the internet have made it easier for people to find and spread extreme ideas. This has led to more people becoming radicalized on their own without joining any specific group. The algorithms that power social media platforms often promote content that gets strong reactions, which can lead people down a path of increasingly extreme content. These are the consequences, and there I have 4 listed down. The first one is that there's been a big jump in violent incidents related to politics In the first half of 2024, there were about 400 incidents of political violence. That's almost 80% more than in 2022. This increase in political violence shows that the heated rhetoric and division are not just words, but are transferring into real world actions that put people's safety at risk. Number two is that people are threatening all kinds of officials, from former presidents to local school board members. This makes it harder for people to want to serve in government roles. The widespread nature of these threats means that public service at all levels is becoming increasingly dangerous, potentially deterring qualified individuals from taking on these important roles and weakening our democratic institutions. For the third one, the Department of Homeland Security has said that far-right extremists are now the biggest domestic threat to American security. This shift in the focus of domestic security concerns highlights how political extremism has become a major issue for law enforcement and national security agencies. Number four, some people are even talking about the possibility of a civil war, with about 1 in 7 Americans strongly agreeing that there might be a civil war in the next few years. The fact that around 48 million people believe civil war is possible shows how deep the divisions in American society have become and how little faith some people have in the ability of the current political system to resolve conflict peacefully. But how can we fix this problem? To fix this problem, people need to find ways to talk to each other without getting angry. We need to understand that just because someone disagrees with us politically, it doesn't make them evil. It's important to remember that most politicians are just people trying to do what they think is best, even if we don't agree with them. By calming down the political talk and treating each other with respect, we can make American politics less scary and more about solving problems. Here is the one for the liberal source that most people get their news from, that is a bad source to get their news from, and here's a Republican source where people on the right typically get their news from and they believe is a good place to get their news from, but in reality it's a bad place to get their news from. Thank you for watching. I will see you guys tomorrow.